Super quick.
Hello. So you see we've got Ricky behind you. So I'm definitely going to have to, because I'm never going to see Ricky this way.
I'm going to move him.
Oh, right.
Can you turn him up?
It's all yes, can you turn the volume up? Is it possible?
Yeah.
Okay. So is Pauline joining?
Yep, just sprucing up, showering, getting rid of all that blood.
Right. Okay, so I think we should start, shall we? Okay, so we've got Ricky on the screen. We've got George Ray-Turner here. We've got Fred Thomas, Salomé, and Jamie O'Neill Harris. Hello. Nice to see you again. Right. We were explaining why Ricky is on the screen. Before we get specifically into Oscar Wilde and Salomé, I think given that we've got this unique configuration, we might just start by talking a little bit about what have been the unique challenges of putting on theatre at this strange time. Ricky, why don't you start remotely, and then we'll hear from the performers as well.
Well, so if you've got a little cold, you can't come in. That's different. I used to work through colds, no problem. Just everything seems to be a little bit more tricksy, a little bit harder. So you kind of have to sort of just push through a bit. Everything's a little tiny bit more exhausting than it was before. But I think it's something that's really rung out from rehearsals was you wouldn't expect somebody to run a marathon if they haven't been training for 18 months. And of course, we haven't been in rehearsal rooms and we haven't been up on stage for such a long time. So actually, it's been a shock to the system, not only physically and emotionally, but also being present. And of course, in a rehearsal room, it's different to a film set or a TV set, where you have to be present all of the time. We rehearse our company all together in the room. And that was a big shock to the system, just being present for 8 hours a day. And then there's mitigations like face coverings and things like that. But actually, I think in rehearsal, we got pretty used to that pretty quickly. Testing, then we had a massive fan in the rehearsal room to change the air ventilation. So there's some logistic stuff, but actually it's just a bit of a realisation that how fit you have to be to do the show or to do theatre.
And performers, actors, do you want to respond to that? Did you find it difficult revving back up and performing?
Yeah, just getting back into that sort of analytical mindset, because you're kind of thrown in at the deep end straight away. Already you're having to kind of read through the script, annotate, analyse the script, and sort of think very allegorically. And then so training the brain to kind of switch back into that mindset is a bit of an adjustment, because we're just, through lockdown, you're just so sedentary, and you're kind of, you're not having to engage the brain in the same way, in kind of hyperactivity way. Kind of analysing things, but then also like vocally as well, as you can probably hear the husky tones, but it's just, I suppose, so the instrument of the voice isn't being taught or stressed the same as it is during lockdown. There's something in your rehearsal room and you're having to project and stuff, so that was a bit of a shock to the system. But
And Fred and Jamie, I think I saw you guys pretty much just before lockdown, didn't? Because you were both in Macbeth, weren't you?
Yeah.
Which we did a discussion for as well.
Yeah.
And when did that finish? That was March, wasn't it?
Yeah, just before they went into lockdown, maybe a week or two beforehand.
So have you done any theatre work since Macbeth
No.
in March till now?
Yeah, it's more like facilitating a bit directing, but the performing side I'm cold. I was really cold before coming into this. Yeah, really cold.
And was it challenging for you?
Yeah, first day of rehearsals completely knocked me out.
Yeah.
For the same reason, just being in a big room, talking to so many people, projecting, all that stuff. But you actually kick back into it quite quickly. The muscle memory is still there, but it was a shock at first. Yeah.
That's good. And how is it? Oh, come on, go. Sorry. Now, please tell me, by the way, if I mispronounce anyone's name, okay? Pauline Babula and Omi Mantri?
Yes.
Okay.
You got it.
All right, awesome. So we were just talking about, explaining why Ricky's on the screen and how that fits into the special challenges of putting theatre on in 2021. And your co-stars were explaining how they found it challenging to get back into the rhythm of rehearsing and performing live. How was it for you, Pauline and Omi, coming back to theatre after lockdowns?
Well, for me, it was quite surprisingly the opposite, because first day of rehearsals was just a week after I finished drama school.
Oh.
So I was very, very fortunate. And,
so this is your professional debut?
Yes.
Oh. So graduating in the middle of all this.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to stay face to face.
Okay.
So I've gone into the rhythm of getting there and being in space. And then a week later, jump into the rehearsal room with these wonderful people. And it was just amazing to drive forward with them. It's amazing.
And Pauline?
Well, I don't know if I can top that, but no, it was pretty strange to get back into theatre. I'm sure they've all said that. It's just, you kind of like oh, this is weird. And it took a while to just settle in and realise that actually you're okay. You know, it's like COVID, hand sanitizer, COVID, hand sanitizer. Can't breathe next to me. So it was kind of adjusting, I guess, and trying to change the way we think when we're doing theatre and kind of making it our own in a sense, and how does it work now, which we managed to do, especially with these boys. Smashing. But yeah, no, it was pretty fun.
And Ricky, during this time, during all the lockdowns, I know we spoke pretty frequently, well not somewhat frequently, because you kept having to postpone plans and your reopening, but you used the time really productively as a company, as Lazarus. You dubbed 2021 the year of exploration. You've done lots digitally, including you live streamed this performance yesterday, is that right? Was that the first time you've live streamed?
Yeah, so that was a baptism of fire, I tell you. Yeah, so yesterday was our first ever live stream. We did the matinee and then we also did the evening. Yeah, so that was a whole new level of stuff, but actually it's great that we're reaching such audiences from such a wide demographic, geographical location, people around the world. So yesterday was pretty crazy, but brilliant.
Yeah. And actors, how was the live streaming? Do you like that idea that people don't have to be in the room with you to enjoy your theatre performances?
Yeah, I think it's good. There was a lot of people on Twitter who were talking about how expensive it is to get down to London to see things. I saw one woman say it's like £200 from where she travels from to you can come down, have food and see a show. So the fact that they can do that from home is brilliant, save them the money, make it a bit more democratic for people.
Yeah, it was also kind of weird in a sense that you just don't know what to expect because the energy is also different. So you kind of playing it, but kind of trying to stay, keep it great for the live audience as well. So it was kind of strange, but a good strange, if that makes sense.
You didn't do it in front of an audience?
I don't know if there was.
There was an audience.
There was an
just on the
audience,
side.
yeah.
So it's just the camera set up on the side.
So it was a multi-camera.
Yes.
Yes. Just a fixed camera.
And motion sensor, yeah.
And is it available on demand?
It's on Netflix, isn't it?
It might be later in the year.
Okay, all right, so we can hopefully recommend it to people when it's on demand. Okay, audience, this is your one question warning. I'm going to come to you next, but let me return Ricky. Salome, I saw the Lazarus production of Salome. Jamie, you were in that as well, but the rest of you guys were not, I think, but these two guys were. And but in 2019 at Greenwich Theatre, and I'm just fascinated and amazed at how different and fresh this is. Obviously in a very different space, new cast, smaller cast. But first of all, Ricky, why did you choose Salome to start performing again?
Well, when we just finished the run in Greenwich in 2019, for a number of years leading up to that, I've been harassing Chris, who is the artistic director of Southwark Playhouse, for us to get some work in there. And so at the end of Salomé, I said, what about if we moved Salomé over? It's like, yeah, okay. And things were progressing, and there was an opportunity to do that. And then the pandemic hit, and like everything else, the breaks went on. And then he got in contact and said, we've got this slot in the summer, shall we finally do Salomé? So it's been cooking for a long time. It's 3 years. That's just sort of crazy. But yeah, so we were like, let's make our Southwark. Not only have we made our live stream debut, we made our Southwark Playhouse debut as well. So it's been strange working in a different venue after being at Greenwich Theatre for 3 and a bit years. But it's been brilliant. Coming back after 3 years, I think quite early on in the process, it's a different space, it's a different time, it's a different group of collaborators, some of the creative team are new as well. So you sort of have to seize the opportunity to do it again. There's no point sort of recreating something that happened 3 years ago. I mean, it would just be a museum piece. But so basically taking the opportunity to look a bit afresh.
So did you revisit the adaptation in that case?
Yeah, so Ricky has adapted it as well, and yes, he has adapted the text anew. Is that right, Ricky?
Yeah, so in the 2019 production there was 3 extra characters which we amalgamated into one. We kept it, much to the very last minute frustration of us all, we kept editing all the way up through first preview. So the show is about 20 minutes shorter than it was on first preview. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot more taut, it's a lot more clean, it's way more straightforward, I think. And of course he repeats himself, doesn't he, Oscar? He repeats himself 10, 15 times, so if you just take 2 or 3 of those repetitions out.
And who was the lucky person beside me who got all those amalgamated bits? Who's the amalgamation? Who's the amalgamated character?
Oh, so that's George and Omi. So they sort of, the young soldier and the page, they sort of sucked up the other character's text.
Okay, good. That's good
we're
for you guys.
Good for us.
And also, Ricky, I actually watched the Q&A we did for Salomé in 2019, in which you complained about having to put in an interval. So I'm pleased to say you ripped the interval back out.
I think that was pretty much the first thing. We finally do the famous one-act play in one act. You know, so, thank goodness.
Okay, very good. All right, sorry to leave you waiting here. Questions? Okay, let's hear from David.
Yeah, sort of a question about the space. And so obviously coming from the Greenwich is a very, very different space. It's very vast, but this has a really nice mixture of it's still very large, but really intimate at the same time. Sort of a question for Ricky and Jamie about that change, but the question for the rest of you about how you found the space, how you found that, because it is like it's big, but obviously you're like pretty much touching the front row. And just how that was, and like rehearsals, and then performance, and how you found with each audience.
Yeah, and sort of an adjunct to that, so those who do know this space here at Southwark will know that it can be configured in lots of different ways. So obviously you made a very conscious decision to do a traverse staging. Was that, Ricky, if you start, was that something you envisaged initially when thinking about bringing the show here?
Well, the big challenge at Greenwich Theatre, I don't know whether people are particularly familiar with it, but it's a big, expansive stage. It's got, something like 14 metres wide or something stupid and 12 metres deep, so it's hugely epic, which I love. But last time we did the show, we had to find ways of making the show bigger and more expansive. And of course, we walked into the Little on a site visit and went, I think we're going to have to sort of pull this down a little bit and see how we go. And then originally it was going to go on 3 sides actually, and it was brilliant when we went to a site visit. It feels very small, and the play isn't very small. It's operating on a heightened level. It's operating on a far more theatrical, expansive, heightened level. So I think it was fairly quickly we said, well, it's got to be in traverse, so you get this incredible length. So when Herod and Herodias having their domestic disputes, we as an audience are involved. All of us are involved in that argument. With the actors being further away, it means we've got more space to come into it. So in a way, it was the opposite challenge. How do you still make this theatre feel big and epic? And that's partly what the actors are doing, because they're not playing naturalism. I'm not sure the play works very well on a naturalistic level. They're playing slightly heightened than that as it goes along, but also the design. So playing the length of the piece rather than the sort of width or depth of the piece. And then there's an idea, and I'm not sure it's really come through, there's an idea that we're sort of sat at Salomé's last supper. We're all sat at the banquet table, and the head producers, the we always sort of joke about that a little bit in, was it A Christmas Carol, when they come on the train with turkey, it's, Merry Christmas to everybody, or whatever the famous line is, but in our version, of course, it's a 7/10. But yeah, it's just feel, you've got to just stretch it out, really, and I think that's what we've done with the text, just sort of stretch it out, and hopefully that's what we've done in the traverses.
And Jamie, given you've had experience of both, how have you found the difference?
Yeah, it's not too bad actually. Just like when you're in the space, you kind of like change naturally. It feels like you just got to try and fill it. So it just kind of happens naturally, yeah.
And let's hear, tell other actors, tell us a little bit about how you use this table and constantly kind of circling the table, going under the table, all sorts of things happening with this table. Any accidents with it? I'm looking especially at Fred.
No! Yeah! The table!
Tell us, Fred.
The table?
The antics with the table.
The table. That's a very good question. I think it's been pretty smooth because we've had the concept of the table has been there since day one. So we've sort of have always been gearing up to having this structure and having that different level and having that length. So it was in the room from the first hour that we met, really. So it's sort of like the seventh member of the cast. If you like, apart from like Will and Ben and all the and the tech which sort of helps fill those amazing spaces. But the table is sort of, I think, the seventh.
Okay.
I felt the table transmogrified into a coliseum actually as the play progressed.
Yeah.
Did the platter always stay on the table?
Oh, what, when he slides it?
Oh,
So
never
far, so
missed
good.
once. Never missed once.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So far, so good, yeah.
Okay, other hands? Yes, here?
What themes in the original text do you think have resonance today?
What themes in the original text? So I'm sure I'm probably stating the obvious for people, but I'm sure everyone knows that in Salomé, originally Salomé is a young woman, and this is a regendered version, obviously. But what other resonances are there? Ricky, we're looking to the director and adapter.
Well, this has been a wanky director act to come to. So I don't really look at what's resonant, because what's resonant for somebody is not the case for somebody else. The way I sort of look at it a bit more is what's immediate about it. And then it just means that with an old play, a classic, you'll sort of just keep playing the nowness, if that makes sense. Rather than, well, that's resonant for that certain audience, well, that would be interesting, or topic based. I sort of don't really think much about that, because we all come from different experiences and different, so we'll find the resonance ourselves. The idea with the gender change there was, I suppose in a way, just lifting the metaphorical veil. I don't need to put a stupid pun in there, but just to sort of expose the homoerotic element of it, which of course Oscar Wilde's doing with the page and the young soldier and their relationship, and how that's the relationship that was coined the phrase of the lover doesn't speak his name. But actually I thought, let's just go one step further. We don't have to worry about the censor and trying to hide this stuff. Let's just lift the lid on it and see what happens. So it raised all sorts of questions, and there was a Twitter debate last night as the live streaming goes on. Is Herod gay? Is Salome gay? And I'm going to be that annoying person going, well, that's up to you. I know that's a bit annoying, but I think it just makes us as audiences participate rather than just regurgitate, if that makes sense.
In your adaptation, though, Ricky, there are definitely some modern notes that that really popped out at me, like when Herod is talking about snowflakes and the ones that try to cancel everything, something like that. So yes, that seems to resonate a bit, does it, Jamie?
Yeah. Well, actually, in the last one we did in 2019, it was quite like a Trumpian reference. I think it was to do with the haters, the fakes, the ones with the fake news. But obviously that feels quite 2019 now. So we've updated it.
Keep updating it. Okay, I'm already running out of time. That's really bad. So I want to hear everybody's question who has a question, and then we'll pick the best ones. Okay? What's your question?
Me?
Yeah,
oh
what's your question?
Yeah, my question would be, when you're amalgamating certain characters and you're making decisions that are away from the original source text, how do you decide what storylines are important? How do you decide which lines need to come out? How do you still manage to tell the same story or the most important story with less people or less characters? How do you as an adapter make those adapting decisions?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Hold that. Is that because your character got cut?
There's a sense of bitterness there. Stem from lived experience.
Sorry. Who had another hand up? We will come to that. That's a great question. Yeah.
So firstly, congratulations. I did see the show back in 2019 as well, and just from a director's perspective, is there anything you took away from the last performance that you consciously wanted to improve or change or adapt for this one? Obviously, it felt quite different to last night, which was obviously refreshing. But is there anything you actively learned from last one that you wanted to do differently this time?
Okay, what did you learn from that? Does anybody have a tissue? I'm sorry, I need to wipe my nose. That's what I'm asking for. Okay, so what did you learn from last time? And yes?
In a question to the director, the first performances, people were scandalised. The audiences thought it was dreadful. Was it important that the director felt that the audiences of today should be equally scandalised?
Thank you. Okay. All right. Hold on. We're going to take. There's so many questions. What time do I have to finish, Gavin? Okay, let's stop and take on some of those. So, amalgamation. How do you amalgamate adapter? What did you learn from the previous run? And did you consciously want to scandalise people anew? Ricky, I hope those aren't all for you. I want all of you guys to leap in on any of those. But Ricky, kick us off.
In reverse order, yeah, I definitely wanted it to be a scandalous, but I don't think it is. I think it's, and actually when it was finally performed, written for the first time, some of the press went, well, it's just a bit late now, isn't it? So even then, it was sort of, I don't know whether is it that scandalous? The thing that I think's brilliant is he puts the shooting of the young soldier in so early. Other playwrights would wait for that, 2 or 3 hours in, and I love that. So yeah, I definitely wanted to. We didn't get a Ouija board out, but I wanted to channel his shock factor and just sort of throw us in a bit. And just mess it up. It's a weird play, isn't it, that we're sort of semi-aroused, but also a little bit ill and feeling a bit sick. I think he taps into something in the human psyche that other playwrights wouldn't go anywhere near. And of course he didn't really after the play, actually. He sort of moved away from it. Adaptation, I think you just have to listen to what works in the room. So whose light moved, lights changed. What's happening now. The biggest thing I think that's changed within the space was the dancers and veils. So actually our version this time is a bit more of a sort of, I think we were calling it like a gay fantasia. But this idea of almost like the dance is the preamble to actually dancing, but because Heron and Barodius have not had sex for a substantial amount of time, I imagine, just the prospect of them about to dance, there's no better phrase to put gets him off. So it's 10 minutes of foreplay, if you like, that ample sort of, that playful sort of playing in a play. So that's radically different to what we did last time.
And last time, yeah, because this time Salome has a dress, right? Last time, if I recall, he's just taking off items of the clothing that he is already wearing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Fred, did you get to choose the dress? Or
There were a few options. There was one which was kind of a sort of silky number. There was a cocktail dress. There was a two-piece. It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
It did. No, it was pretty much, I think the idea of the Fantasia and sort of that big puffy skirts came in quite early. It was really like, that was sort of the one really, wasn't it, Ricky? Like when we came on with that idea. And it's just...
There was a peaky one knocking around at one point, wasn't there? But that wasn't sexy enough or glamorous enough.
I think it felt quite grounded almost, you know, like, whereas this one sort of had a fantasy element to it, sort of quite fairy tale-esque, rather than, yeah.
Very fetching, very fetching. Okay, more hands. Yeah, okay, and I've got to speed everybody up. Okay, let's hit them quickly. We're going to start with you, and then you. Yep.
Okay, speaking of scandal, where was all the nudity that we were so interested in?
Oh my God! Fred?
Hey! Saving it for the Q&A, mate.
Okay, all right, yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, Did you consider putting in more nudity very quickly, Ricky?
Yes, and at the end of the dance in St. Wales, that was the original idea, he'd be nude. And then actually when you get into rehearsal, you sort of go, we don't have to go down that line. But it's interesting you bring that up, because it's the biggest complaint people would get. There's not enough pop. As one audience member put it the other night, there's not enough cock.
That makes a lot of sense, really.
We don't mean to objectify you, but we...
No, that's okay.
Object
away.
Yes, there was another hand here. Yeah.
I just had a question for the actors, actually. What was the easiest thing for you guys to identify with the characters, and what was the most challenging thing?
Okay, hold on. Just think about that. And then the final question is from you.
Can I ask about Jochanan's costume? Because there's a traditional depiction of John the Baptist in his hair shirt, and clearly you departed from that. So I was wondering, was the white down the middle with the blood a reference to something, or did you just come off the costume designer's head?
Okay, so that's great. That's a very knowledgeable question. So Ricky, quickly answer that, and then we'll have all the actors answer the actors' question.
So Jochanan, you've probably noticed the gold thing in the play. There's colours he constantly uses, and Jochanan has one base colour, you've got the silver and the whites and all of that sort of thing. Obviously, Princess is a black actor, so we started to talk about, well, whereas Salomé uses that sort of against him and plays two colours. But the idea originally, again, you can judge, but the idea is almost that he's been in this system and he's been his skin's been burnt, so it can look silvery and shiny in some respects, but actually then it becomes the plaster that the scorpions live in that Salomé gives. And I don't know whether he was best on or best off tonight. He has an option, depending on how comfortable he is. But there is a version where it's a big ripped open shirt. But I also think it means we take away our baggage when the actor doesn't look like the person we think the character looks like. It's like all modern depictions of Jesus as a white man. Well, that's probably not going to be the case, is it? But so I think it's quite. I find it interesting casting choice there to sort of completely flip our view and look at it again.
Okay, and actors? Answering this question?
Yeah, definitely some of the most central themes of the play is this idea of voyeurism and desire in excess. So definitely in terms of connecting to certain sort of values or certain attributes which are just inherently present in human beings, these kind of basic instincts of love and desire and covetousness and jealousy, because they're all lived experiences that we in some capacity have been through to whatever extent. So that's easy to kind of tease into or to tap into, coupled with the intentions of your character and that relationship. But then definitely I've struggled a little bit with the ideas of sort of the phantasmagorical, or like the dreamlike and the moon and the otherly, the things which are kind of like out of reach but slightly obscure and abstract. So the idea of like this presence of this lingering foreboding sense of doom is something that is, you know, to that extent as well, because the stakes are so high, because all the characters at any moment they're just living hand in hand in life and death. So I would say that is one of the things that I probably struggle with, just getting the idea of the expansiveness of it, the stakes of it.
Very good. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, wanting something that you shouldn't really want. You know, desiring something that you shouldn't really want.
Yeah.
I love gold. I think it's just unrequited love. You know? I think one main theme is unrequited love, and the thing that I find tricky is I've only known Salomé for 3 days, but that's what I desire. It's like, okay, we've all been in love where you kind of don't think, you just do, and that's kind of what you have to grab onto.
And what about the Queen? That's it.
Yeah, being the only female. Well, actually, it was. I didn't really think much of it in regards to. I think I always try and disassociate characters to how I feel, if that makes sense. So it was more to do with just going with it, playing with it, seeing what the others were giving, and then trying not to fit into a stereotype of this being, being black. Obviously, it's not black, right? Fit in that stereotype of like I had a conversation with Ricky about whether it should be, whether the tension that she has with Herod and not coming across as like an angry black woman or kind of thing, and so it was more to do with just trying to see how I can play it without coming across as fitting into the stereotypes of what people see or think it will be. So that was quite something to connect to.
Yeah. Thank you. And our Salome.
Yeah. Good question. Cheers, man. I think it's a tricky one. I think because initially it took me several readings to actually start to really, because I think the style of the text I think is quite unique in a way of the period and of writers of the sort of late 19th century. And I don't think it's in keeping to many other time periods, So I think and having not really worked on a text and with a writer that uses a language in that way, a lot of like early modern and more contemporary text is more my experience. So it's sort of a period which is sort of I haven't really touched that much. So really, going to the 1890s really, and sort of like I found that quite tricky, and that's what I'd say. And then everything else is just sort of, fucking hell, fucking hell, man. Anyway, that's it. Does that answer the question?
I was pleased to see that lots of you here tonight are new to Lazarus, and I hope this is your first of many Lazarus productions, because they're an incredible company. And if you don't know, they are renowned for doing this, looking at classical texts and reinventing them in interesting ways. And I know Ricky has said to me many times, I say, well, how do you do that? And he says, when we go into the rehearsal room, we don't think of this as a classic text, we think of every play as a new play. So the difference, though, when you often are working on a new play, is you often have the playwright in the room with you, don't you? Yeah. If it's new work. So my final question, and you don't all have to answer, but if anybody has a good answer, we'll leap at it. If this was a new play and you had Oscar Wilde in the room with you, what might you have asked him or told him? Ricky, do you have anything?
Are the rumours true that you wrote this play in an opium den?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God, I don't know. Do you know what? I think part of the joy is not having them in the room. Not then you can come with your life. But two, also, the part of the challenge for me about putting theatre on is trying to work out why the writers are doing what they're doing. That's the big challenge for me. That's the hardest bit, but the most fun. What's he doing? And I don't pretend to understand them at all. But that's what's really exciting about it. And presumably that's why he's a great classicist. People go back to his plays again and again. What is he doing? What's he up to? So it's still a bit of a minefield in many ways, and that's the reason why I'd like to do another one.
Very good, very good. Anyone else? No, you're all silenced by that. Okay, then let me just did you have anything else to add, Ricky?
No.
This is very. I hope you're in person for our next one. But meanwhile, this production continues here until the 11th of September. So will you all please spread the word? And once we give them all a big clap, we're gonna budge up and do what I call the social media money shot. So for any of you who've got phones that are on social media, will you take a photo, share it, tag them all, get everybody talking about it? Yes? Everyone's nodding? Awesome. Great. And in which case, join me in thanking Ricky and George and Fred and